Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Eric Chiang. I'm going to be talking today about online testing. I'm at Florida Atlantic University, so in addition to teaching online, I'm also in my role as Director of Instructional Technology, overseeing all of the online courses in our College of Business. And we have a fairly large College of Business. We have almost 9,000 business majors and 750 economics majors. And we also cater to a very broad student demographic in South Florida. So we offer all of our business core classes in both face-to-face traditional format as well as online lecture capture, as well as offer a number of fully online business majors. And so in terms of numbers, we're talking about nearly 7,000 students each semester who take an online class. And so that brings up the challenge for us to come up with a way to administer or proctor 28,000 online exams each semester in the most effective and yet cost-efficient approach in terms of both money as well as the time commitment by instructors. So now in terms of the best case scenario is that we don't have to worry about this, right? All students would not even think about doing anything dishonest. They grew up knowing that they have to study hard, take their exams, and so therefore we don't have to invest any resources, anything towards proctoring or to curtail cheating. But we know that that's not always the case. And so in our college, we've really spent the last few years investigating the different strategies we can do to minimize academic dishonesty. And so what we sort of concluded was that there's no one solution that's really the best approach, because every approach, whether it's testing centers or live in-class testing or remote proctoring, they all have their advantages and costs. And so what we do at FAU is we actually give the instructor the ability to choose among a set of approved testing methods. And so the rest of my presentation is really going to be sharing with you some of the experiences of our actual instructors about what they choose to do in their class and some of the advantages and disadvantages that they encountered using each approach. So as far as academic dishonesty with online courses, we sort of summarize 4 key problems with online testing. So the first is group collaboration. So this is your typical, students are coming together, working together on exams. Hey, you do the true/false questions, I'll do the multiple choice. Let's trade up our answers. Or, hey, what's the answer to 38? I'm having trouble with this. It's an outstanding example of specialization and comparative advantage, but not necessarily one that you would really encourage your students to do. So group collaboration is obviously a major issue, but so is information sharing. So in information sharing, you have students who take the exam early in an exam window and then share that information with students who are taking it later in the window. And so most online exams have this problem because you can't practically make all students take the exam at the same time online. Typically, you would have a window, say 6 hours, more commonly 12 or 24 hours. In some cases, some of our faculty have their exams open for days or even a week. So in that case, there's definitely some information sharing that could take place between students. The third issue is dealing with the professional test taker. So these are interesting people because these are typically your entrepreneurial, very bright students who have rationally weighed the costs and benefits and the risk and rewards of engaging in a very illicit type of business practice. But we've actually uncovered at one point some evidence that there was actually a market for professional test takers, especially when we were giving exams in an unproctored setting. And it was rumored that the going market rate for a guaranteed A on an exam was $150. More for final exams, but about $150 will buy you an A. And this wasn't a major problem, but the 1 or 2 that we suspected that were running this operation, they were so busy that they wished that the exam window was longer so they can fit in more customers in that window. So that's definitely an issue that we had to deal with, and that really put the pressure on us that we really have to stop this. I mean, clearly, academic integrity, this is going to hurt a lot of our reputation if this problem becomes bigger than what it is. Okay? The last issue with academic dishonesty is sort of a gray area, and that's the ability of students to search online for publisher test banks. So I call this a gray area because in most online exams, it is open book. and students are free to search for answers online. So is it considered dishonest if they're able to search for a publisher test bank that happens to be leaked online? This is a very interesting issue because we've done some research that textbooks that are relatively new don't typically have this problem as much. But textbooks that are fairly late in their editions do. So one thing we have to sort of understand is, or accept when we give online exams, is we have to assume that the test bank is not entirely secure. Okay, so if you are relying solely on test bank questions and not including some of your own questions as part of the pool of questions that you're drawing from, you're really opening the door to some bad behavior. Okay, so again, I did a little bit of searching. And what's available online as far as test bank files and other instructor files tend not to be so severe on the early editions. But of course, we know that some books are now approaching up to their 20th edition. And so the problem is considerably worse. So why is this a major problem? It's because when students take online exams, they're incentivized to use whatever resources are at their disposal. And the internet is just one of those resources that's hard to control. So if I were taking an online exam and I wasn't prepared, I haven't studied, here's how I would take the exam. Okay? So what I would do is go to the exam, highlight the question. I would right-click the question, which there's an option to go right to Google, which populates the Google browser with that question. The answer will show up with the answer in the search results. If it doesn't, it'll take you to a site where you can pull up one of the answers from a test bank in about 20, 30 seconds. So this is a major problem if you are over-relying on a test bank that's been compromised and it's completely available and searchable online. A couple of interesting things about this now. Why are test questions appearing on the very top of Google searches? And secondly, why are the answers appearing right next to the question where students don't even need to bother clicking on the website itself to search for the answers? The answer is right there in the search results. So I asked my sister, who actually works for a subsidiary of Google, and she had a perfect response. She says, well, if you have hundreds of students around the country all searching for the exact same question, Google is going to think that's a very important question to answer. And they're going to find the best resource for you to answer that question. And in this case, even put the answer right in the Google search to save you the time of having to go to the original source to find the answer. And so we find that, again, this happens more often than not. If you're using test bank files that have not been revised from edition to edition, and unfortunately, a lot of these late edition textbooks, they haven't been revising their test banks. So they're out there, and they appear on the top of our Google searches. Of course, in order to do a Google search, there has to be an original source. And that is where sites like Quizlet or StudyBlue, which are online study sites that help students help other students study for exams. And actually, these sites started with a legitimate purpose. It was started to really have students share their expertise about certain subjects, to provide flashcards and other study aids for other students to prepare for the classes. Unfortunately, what's happened now is a lot of these sites are also where students would post their exams and their answers. And in these cases, they are searchable online. And so it's creating this ability to search the entire internet very quickly for answers. Now, I said earlier that some of these sites provide more information about certain textbooks than others. So if you were to go to a site like StudyBlue, which is a legitimate business helping students study for exams, but if you were to type the name of a textbook, let's say one of these textbooks in their 15th to 20th editions, how many files will you actually find on that textbook? Here's one. Okay? This is one textbook that has 176 files posted about that textbook. And if you look at what type of files are being posted, a good portion of these files are exams. They're actual exams that students are receiving back from their class and then posting online with the answers. In fact, in some cases, the files are even posted with the professor's name and the year of the semester that it was given. Okay? So this is really one of the key problems of of online testing is the ability of students to, there's so much information out there, and it's not just using it to study, it's really using it to search for the answers very quickly, which is something that's happening in online exams. Okay, so now that I've depressed everyone about the about how we can't trust students anymore about online testing, but there are a lot of solutions out there. And so the rest of my talk is really talking about the solution. What can we do, whether it's in an unproctored setting or a proctored setting, to improve the security of our online exams? Okay? So first, I'm going to talk about the unproctored strategies. So this is the case where you are not actually proctoring students, making them go to test centers or using a remote proctor, but instead just trying to use best practices for an unproctored exam. And there's quite a few out there that have shown to at least minimize the incentive for cheating. For example, to create large question pools. So you're drawing from a very large pool of questions, so every student has a different test. What I like to add to that is to add your own questions. Okay? Even just adding a handful, a few dozen of your own questions into the question pool, it makes students very frustrated when they're trying to search for your questions online and realizing it's not there. So when they start seeing these questions that are not online, they give up searching for the questions that are online. And so in the end, they're actually focusing more on studying and not worrying about the ability to search. So one of the best strategies is to use a large question pool with a lot of your own questions. Just make up some questions, like a handful of questions. Of course, the randomization of the exams, as well as the limiting the test time to make it harder to search for all the answers. Narrow the test window. We talked about the information sharing, making sure there's not much time for those who are taking the exam earlier to convey information to those taking it later. Backtracking. Backtracking is when you prevent students from going back to questions they've already seen. Some professors like to do this, some do not. I like to use the preventing students from backtracking because what it does is it prevents students from reading the first 5 or 6 questions, calling a friend and says, hey, can you help me? I took a picture of these questions. Can you help me solve these questions? And I'll call you back in a half hour, and I'll get the answers from you. Okay? So backtracking allows you to go back to questions that you skipped and then answer those questions later. By preventing backtracking, you eliminate that possibility. Students have to answer the question as soon as they see it right away. And finally, frequent low-stakes assessments. Instead of giving maybe 2 or 3 exams worth 30%, maybe give 6 or 7 exams worth 10 to 15%. At least make it very costly if they want to use some other means of achieving a higher result on the exam in terms of instead of any dishonest behavior. One thing before I want to mention before proctoring methods is there's also a software called lockdown browsers. Many of you may have used lockdown browsers such as Respondus. And lockdown browsers prevent the students from going to any other site on their computer, which obviously would minimize the ability to search for answers. But what lockdown browsers do not do is it doesn't prevent them from using a second computer. And these days, if you use a second computer, students do need to type out the question as opposed to just automatically right-clicking and going right to the answer. But with voice recognition software and with Google, with Google, you type in the first 3 words of a question, the rest fills in right away. I do not personally use Respondus, the lockdown browsers, because I find that it creates one more technical layer that students have to do before they take the exam, and it leads to problems. Students get kicked out of the exam, so they have to go through the lockdown browser again, and it just causes a lot of work for the instructor for a marginal benefit that's just not that high.